As a fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. Pete, man, how you doing, man?
I am excellent. I cannot wait for this fight card on Saturday. And I feel like we're spoiled right now with a bunch of fights. And, I'm not complaining. So I cannot wait.
Yeah, this is one of those fight cards. It's obviously you got the title fight, and you got to do kind of a deep dive. And of course, if you haven't been around MMA Twitter today, we do have a change in the fight card as it appears Ian Heinisch is out of the fight card. Anthony Ivy is now going to step in and take on Gerald Meerschaert. As Anthony and Ian are actually represented by the same management agency, and obviously it's the reports out there from MMA Junkie about the COVID-19 testing of someone in Ian's corner potentially testing positive for it. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see what Anthony Ivy's salary is going to be right now. There's no betting lines out on that fight, so definitely something to pay attention to. But, last week, obviously the big thing was about the smaller cage, and we saw a lot of finishes last week.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real difference dealing with a smaller cage. I think we noticed the difference when it came to the action, the amount of finishes, the likelihood of grappling exchanges occurring. And I think that's going to be something that's, quite normal for every card going forward here at Apex. So I think we always have to take that into consideration for sure.
Of course, throughout the show, we are going to answer your questions. At this first time checking us out, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. We go from the main event all the way down. Then any questions that we did not get to, we will get to at the end of the show. We'll be here for 1 hour talking about UFC 250. But of course, Pete, the main event, Amanda Nunez versus Felicia Spencer. Amanda Nunez, of course, a huge betting favorite on the card on DraftKings, 9,400, 6,800 for Felicia Spencer, $23 on FanDuel for the champion, and $13 for the challenger. And I feel like the way we should kind of start this off with, look, Amanda Nunez is going to be very popular. But how does Felicia Spencer shock the world on Saturday night?
Yeah, well, first, don't listen to me when it comes to the main events. I've been quite unlucky when it comes to the main events. Outside of that, we've been, breaking down the fights great. But let me tell you, the underdogs lately have been coming through on the main event, and it's crazy. We're on such a run for underdogs in the main event. I think that stops here, though. I really feel like Amanda Nunez is just on another level. She can answer all of the problems that Felicia Spencer is going to try to present to her. Whether it's striking, grappling, ground and pound, anything. I feel like, even at 9,400, I do like Amanda Nunez here. The game plan for Felicia Spencer definitely has to be to try to wear out Amanda Nunez and test that cardio. I honestly think that's the pathway to success, is trying to make Amanda Nunez just gas out from throwing either too many shots or constantly having to defend the takedown. We have seen early on in Amanda Nunez's career where if she is put on her back, she is a little susceptible to ground and pound and getting tossed around the cage. We're talking a long time ago in Kat Zingano, and then early on before she was in the UFC, where nowadays she has a great team behind her at American Top Team. She's well prepared. The X factor in all of this is also the COVID training of how often are each fighter training, and how many training partners can they actually have, how well prepared are they during this pandemic. So it's an interesting fight. I'm not gonna totally write off Felicia Spencer, and I feel like it's an MMA fight, anything can happen, and that's why this sport is so beautiful, because on paper it looks one way, but you never really know what's going on between somebody's ears, or how they're going to implement their game plan. So I'm fascinated by the matchup, but I have to side with Amanda Nunez.
Yeah, it was when you talk about the underdog winning in a UFC main event, I believe UFC 248 was the last time the betting favorite won in the main event. Of course, that was Asuncao against Yoel Romero, which was not exactly a fun fight to watch here. In terms of Amanda Nunez, because I'm sure probably someone's going to ask this question at some point, is she a better cash games or GPP play?
I think that she can be used for both, and it all depends on how the fight goes. Obviously, I think that she's a safe play. You're talking about arguably the best female fighter to ever walk the earth, and why wouldn't you want to back her? It's almost like having John Jones on the card. If you avoid John Jones, it's kind of silly. And the 5 rounds helps. Typically, female fights go the full distance. If that is the case, you could be looking at a nice little point total if Felicia Spencer is able to tough out a lot of bad situations that Amanda Nunez is going to put her in And, Felicia Spencer shows that she's extremely tough, especially against Chris Cyborg. So I will have some lineups with Felicia Spencer. And the only reason is not necessarily because I think that she's going to get the victory over Amanda Nunez, but maybe she can survive all 5 rounds and land some takedowns and get some significant strikes. And at bare minimum salary, you're looking at 6,800. You could do worse than 50 or so points if it goes that route, but I will be predominantly backing Amanda Nunez at 9,400.
Of course, in her last fight, Amanda Nunez did go all 5 rounds. She scored 124.5 points against Jermaine David Montemay. Of course, that was helped out by 8 takedowns and 5 advances. When you look back at a decision fight in a 5-round fight, prior to that, you got to go fight against Valentina Shevchenko. She scored 89 points in that fight, where she had 86 significant strikes, 2 takedowns, and 2 advances. So there's something to pay attention to there. But, look, to me, it's Felicia's got to get the fight to the ground. I would be thoroughly surprised if you tell me Felicia Spencer shocks the world and it's not via taking the fight to the ground.
Yeah, Felicia Spencer is more of a volume pressure type of fighter, and that pressure can definitely wear on an opponent. And we have seen Amanda Nunez look a little tired, but she's human. Everybody gets tired. Felicia Spencer does have some tricky kicks. And I've always said that I even thought that Holly Holm could potentially land a head kick against Amanda Nunez. So, maybe Felicia Spencer's looking to go up top, because any kicks that are low, you would expect Amanda Nunez to charge forward, throw a straight right hand down the middle, put her on her back, and it just brutalize her with some ground and pound. So, it's not impossible. It's a fight, but it's highly unlikely.
Do you like Nunez in the MVP spot on FanDuel?
I feel like it has to be, in your consideration. $23. I think it's hard to avoid her, honestly. You're looking at a relatively newcomer in Felicia Spencer, who hasn't really been tested too much. And I know I just ended up saying that she was tough against Chris Cyborg Santos, but she hasn't really been put in like bad positions on the mat, or we haven't seen her really, experience much adversity and thrive. So at $23 for one of the best fighters ever, I don't think it's bad. And I'd have a lineup or 2 on FanDuel with that strategy.
Jason Miller asked in the chat, stack Nunez Spencer in a main event only.
I think you should in a main event only, and because on the main events, on the main card, I think that makes the most sense. It has the high probability of going 5 rounds, even though Amanda Nunez finishes so many opponents and really is the difference maker in a lot of female fights where they tend to go to distance. She finishes them early, but I think that's a strategy for that. I'm probably even going to stack this fight, outside of just a main event only, where it's the full roster. I think that's a decent strategy if it does go all 5 rounds and it's a back and forth war. But for the most part, I'll be taking Nunez and moving on.
Co-main event is a bantamweight matchup. Cody Garbrandt taking on Rafael Asuncao. 8,600 for the former champion in Cody Garbrandt. 7,600 for Rafael Asuncao over on FanDuel. $17 for Garbrandt. $15 for Rafael Asuncao. Break this one down for you, because obviously for Cody Garbrandt, we have not seen him win a fight since December 30th, 2016. 3 straight losses, all by knockout. And of course, Rafael Asuncao, he's had 15 fights in the UFC. He's 11-4 in those 15 fights. Of those 15 UFC fights, 10 have gone to the decision. He's 8-2 in those decisions. His only stoppages in the UFC against Matthew Lopez and Issei Tamura.
Yeah, it's a very difficult fight for Cody Garbrandt. There's so many unknowns and uncertainties. I don't understand why he'd take this matchup. It's a very tough fight, and Rafael Asuncao, has a win over TJ Dillashaw and literally is one of the best 135 pounders on the planet. And I really believe that he's in that elite category where he beats everybody outside the champ. And now I really think that there's a strong possibility that he could become the champ one day. You're looking at Asuncao with 14 out of his 27 wins via finish. And I know in the UFC, he's been predominantly a decision machine, but you are talking about Cody Garbrandt, who is so susceptible to getting hit by big shots. And he has a smart game plan until he gets cracked, and it seems like he loses his cool, and his fight IQ is pretty poor. I know that he has been splitting camp between, working with Mark Henry and Ricardo Almeida in New Jersey, and then also working with, Team Alpha Male in Sacramento. So that's a unique wrinkle that I don't know how that's going to work out for him, because that's a lot of traveling. You know what I mean? I don't know if the jiu-jitsu training and everything's obviously you have to train jiu-jitsu facing Rafael Asuncao, but I feel like a lot of the focus should be on the defense. And I think that's why he is working with Mark Henry in the head movement. But outside of head movement, I think you need to be working on, blocking and working on your footwork and getting back to that dominant cruise type of performance. Because if he fights like that, he can beat a lot of people in the division. At 8,600, you're getting the price tag because he's a former champion. And I can't blame DraftKings for putting that out there. But I don't hate Asuncao at 7,600, and I'll definitely have Asuncao in a few lineups.
I think the question is, does Cody Garbrandt get into a firefight? I mean, like think about his Pedro Munoz fight. Yeah. Early on that fight, he's fighting very smart. And then all of a sudden he gets hit with a shot, and then it goes into brawl mode, and then everything kind of goes downhill for him. That to me is kind of the interesting thing. Is I believe the ceiling in this fight is much higher for Cody Garbrandt than Rafael Asuncao.
You would think so because of looking at history, and I can't blame you for backing Garbrandt at 8,600. It's just tough for me to back somebody and put my money on the line when he has literally been knocked out in his past 3 fights. And Asuncao, people just think he's a grappler, but the dude can scrap, and any of the training footage I've seen, Asuncao's sparring hard, whereas Cody Garbrandt's working on, strength and conditioning and maybe laying off the sparring because he hasn't. I wonder how much sparring he's done since the knockout losses, because he doesn't want to get re-injured during camp. And he's notorious for getting like concussions in camp and everything. So, I would much rather take a guy who's doing live sparring than a guy who's just hitting pads or hitting noodles and then, working on strength and conditioning. I think Asuncao can really bring it to him. And I will have a few lineups with Garbrandt because of, his success in the division and the glimpses of potential that we have seen. But the fight IQ is so poor for me that it's hard for me to fully back him. So I will definitely have more Asuncao than Garbrandt, but that's just me.
Yeah, Roy in the comments says you could be different and go with Asuncao versus whoever's going to pick Cody Garbrandt and who's lost 3 in a row. If he gets knocked out, you're going to be ahead of a lot of people in the tourney. Of course, everyone's going to be playing in the millionaire contest. So you got to try to, if you're going to have multiple entries, you got to value up those lineups. I'm going to have Cody in a couple of lineups just because, we've seen what he can do with those hands. Now, my favorite fight on this card is Aljamain Sterling versus Corey Sandhagen. Aljamain Sterling, 8,200, 8,000 for Corey Sandhagen. Over on FanDuel, $17 for Sterling, $15 for Garbrandt, or for Sandhagen, excuse me, which is the exact same figure for the co-main event. Sometimes I don't understand the FanDuel salaries. This is one of those fights I feel like when we're talking about the optimal lineup, I feel like there's a good chance the winner of this fight is in the optimal lineup.
I understand what you're saying, and it very well could be, because usually that 8,000 is the make or break point for a lot of lineups, and those are the people that are left alone, or it's such a close fight, and that's why these salaries are so similar. That's how it always is each week. In this fight, I feel like they're going to negate each other for the most part. And I think Sterling could look to take Sandhagen down to the mat. Sandhagen has been taken down in every UFC fight, but he also has great jiu-jitsu and is looking to throw up submissions. But Sandhagen's pressure is great when it comes to standing up. And I don't think Sterling's faced somebody with such a reach advantage, but also, a skill advantage on the feet. So, I mean, they did have the same reach, but like the stature. So the stature of Sandhagen and the way he moves, he's not some 5'6", 5'5" guy where he can get bullied around and by Sterling just throwing kicks. Sandhagen is going to be there putting together great combinations, and it's going to be there from bell to bell. I think it's a close fight. I am backing Sandhagen and leaning Sandhagen. I don't know if it's the best DK score for either one of these guys, because I can see Sterling wanting to stop Sandhagen's onslaught by just wrapping him up, holding him against the cage, trying to get a takedown, maybe not getting it, and them both having moments in the fight. Whereas other fights, I feel like can be absolute dominance from bell to bell. I like Sandhagen though at 8,000. I think that the potential is there for his volume.
Yeah, when you look at the tail of the tape, that's one of the things that sticks out to you is about the reach. The fact of Sterling's 5'7", Sandhagen's 5'11", but Sterling's actually has a 1-inch reach advantage. Also, when you look at the tail of the tape, one of the numbers that sticks out to you: significant strikes land per minute for Corey Sandhagen, 7.16. Which is fourth highest in UFC history. Of course, that's minimum 5 fights. You got any guesses on who number 1 is?
I have no idea.
Paulo Costa.
Really? Interesting. Okay.
I think it's Paulo Costa, Justin Gaethje. I don't think that's really a surprise.
Yep.
Number 3 is Leslie Smith.
Now that is weird.
Well, you think about fighters who are going to keep it on the feet. The other stat that sticks out to you about Corey Sandhagen in all of his UFC fights, he's been taken down at least one time. He was taken down 4 times by Rafael Asuncao in his last matchup. And so you have to imagine that Sarah Longo team, as they were building the game plan for this fight, that had to be a huge part of the game plan. But you also, Corey Sandhagen, his gym team elevation has been on a roll. And I know we were talking about this a little earlier, is that, how much of him is getting taken down is kind of in a way of him wanting to go to the ground and get into a grappling situation.
Yeah, and I think that, Sandhagen comes from the hottest gym right now in the game. And, training at elevation definitely ups your cardio and makes you, be able to have a higher output because you believe in your cardio and your gas tank. In saying that, Aljamain Sterling hasn't had the most success with his takedowns as of lately. He's been struggling recently of getting his opponents to the mat, but he has shown in the past that he can grapple people in a great way. I think that would be the safest approach against Corey Sandhagen rather than just trying to stand up with him. I do like Sandhagen in the fight. And, my expectations are tempered a little bit because I don't know if it's going to be the most highest scoring fight on the card.
Of course, be sure to go over to Awesemo.com. Got some great promo codes out there right now. Get 20% off the PGA Yearly with the combo Schwab, SCHWAB. That is valid through June the 11th. Also, you can get 10% off the Platinum Yearly with the promo code SUMMER. That's also valid through June the 11th. If you're looking to sign up for the Awesemo Plus weekly package, right now you can get that for $8.95, where you get access to all of Awesemo's coveted tools. Go to awesemo.com/join to take advantage of this offer, and follow Awesemo on Twitter at Awesemo_com. Of course, be sure to hit a like here on the YouTube chat. And of course, if you have any questions, be sure to hit them up in the chat as we go down the fights. Then we got another matchup that me and Pete have. It seems like we have spent a lot of time this week talking about this fight, and that is Neil Magney versus Anthony Rocco Martin. 8,700 for Neil Magney, 7,500 for Rocco Martin. Over on the FanDuel side of things, $17 for Neil Magney, $14 for Rocco Martin. And one of the things that sticks out to me about Rocco Martin, 7 of his last 9 fights have gone the distance. But this is one of those fights that when you're looking for those under 8,000 options, Rocco Martin's got to be a guy you have to look at. Yeah,
I mean, it's a strange week because the options under 8,000 just, don't really stick out to me this week. And, I'm not backing too many underdogs on this fight card, and it's a little odd. But I do see a path to victory for Rocco Martin at 7,500. I like his price tag. I like, what I've been seeing in the cage, the momentum behind him. He's been making changes. He looks good standing up, has some sharp boxing, has a great calf kick. And we have seen Neil Magney struggle in the past against calf kicks. Santiago Ponzinibbio dropped Magney several times and then ultimately finished him because of the brutal leg kicks that Magney endured. Now, after that fight, Magney made adjustments, and whatever his name is, Long Jiang, or he tried to kick him, and he made adjustments, and he wasn't checking, but he was stepping back and fading back and countering with some good shots. Now, Rocco Martin, I think, should look to get close to Neil Magny so he's not stuck on the outside getting picked apart, because Neil Magny does have a significant reach advantage in 80 inches over 73 inches. So Magny, we know, has a great jab and a great cross. But if you can get inside of that, or you can slip and rip and come over the top, I think that, Rocco Martin has some decent potential here at 7,500. He's training with the Lima brothers, and I actually think the Lima brothers are pretty similar to the stature of Neil Magny. And I don't know if Rocco Martin goes in there and gets a finish. He has great submissions. He has wrestling in his back pocket. He just doesn't really use it as he should. Now, Magny likes to throw straight punches, volume strike into clinches to get on top. But if you remember anything from Martin's last fight, he has the ability to do pretty well against guys that are trying to take him down. And I think that he might be able to punish Magny. So Magny's not one of my favorite 8,000 options. I will look at Martin as a 7,000 option in a few lineups. But this is, again, not one of my favorite fights to target.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. If you want to be a Neil Magny backer, I mean, there could be a lot of significant strikes that get thrown to a fight that just stays on the feet for 15 minutes. I think the likelihood is this will be a 15-minute fight. I wouldn't say I'm going to have a lineup with Neil Magny in it, but I'll have more shares of Rocco Martin. And it's just because I don't like a lot of options under 8,000, and he's the one option that I feel the most comfortable with.
Yeah, it's tough this week. And, of all weeks, of course, it's $4 million. So you have to take some stances and try to find that guy that's going to be under-owned, over-owned, or somebody that can be a sneaky cheap play. And I think that Martin could be that.
And as one of the commenters in the chat, Tom Green says, Martin slows down, fight scores low. I think anyone who's had Rocco Martin on DraftKings, you know what that comment's about. And I think that's literally one of the comments that me and you over the course of this week have talked about, is just not being a high score, but it might be a fight you have to look at. One of the guys that will probably be, if not the highest owned, one of the highest owned, that is Sean O'Malley taking on Eddie Wineland. He's 9,300, 6,900 for Wineland on DraftKings. Over on the FanDuel side of things, Sean's 22 and $10 for Eddie Wineland. Can you sell me on Eddie Wineland at all?
No, I can't, and I'm not going to. Eddie Wineland, he's had a lot of success in the WEC, is where I started seeing him fight, and then he came over to the UFC when the merge happened, and he hasn't had the most success in the UFC, but he's tough. He's like he's a former champ technically, who is somewhat of a gatekeeper of the UFC. And, this is a tough matchup for Sean O'Malley, but not really. It's a tough matchup on paper, but it's a great test for him. And the reason it's a great test is because Wineland's very tough. Now, in saying that, Wineland does not hold his hands up at all. His hands literally never touch his face. They're near his chest, and he moves his head with a lot of head movement, which could lead to him moving into a shot. O'Malley is so crisp. O'Malley is so technical and so tricky that I honestly think that he's going to hurt Wineland and make it look easy in there. He's just going to outclass him on the feet. Now, if Wineland, with all of his fights, he has 38 fights, he needs to go in there and try to press Sean O'Malley against the cage. We have seen him do it in the past, but he tends to want to stand and bang. But he's usually the better striker in those situations. And, just getting rocked and somewhat dropped by Grigory Popov in his last fight makes me a little wary for him to even survive, because Popov shouldn't be in the UFC. O'Malley's on the rise, Wineland's on the decline. 6,900 for Wineland is a big no thank you. He's one of the options I absolutely cross off my list. Could a lucky shot land? Of course, it's a fight, but O'Malley could be heavily owned, and I do wonder if Wineland's just tough enough to survive, because you think of Sukumtat and, other fighters that were able to survive O'Malley's onslaught. But, O'Malley's somewhat of a finisher for the 135-pound division, so we'll see.
Let's say you can only have one.
Yeah.
Amanda Nunez or Sean O'Malley.
That's tough. I've been battling that all week when I've been looking at the lineups. It's tough. I feel like the ownership's going to be more towards O'Malley, and I think the potential for takedowns as well is there for Nunez, whereas O'Malley, you're looking at knockdowns, significant strike totals. He's tricky, and he does have a ground game. I know he spoke on his podcast about, he might even get a submission over Wineland, and that would be impressive. But I don't see that happening. I think he's just going to just outclass him and coast to 12-0.
Now, when you look at a prospect that everyone has their eyes on, that's Chase Hooper. He's at 8,500 on DraftKings. His opponent, Alex Caceres, 7,700. Over on the FanDuel side of things, $16 for Chase and $14 for Caceres. I pulled this stat up on Alex Caceres. He has 10 UFC wins. He's had 21 UFC fights. Of his 10 wins, only one of those fighters is still in the UFC. That's Steven Peterson.
Yeah, I mean, but in saying that, that also means that Caceres has been around a long time, though, too. And, a lot of fighters come in and out. So you can look at that stat from both sides, but I totally understand what you're saying. And the guys he's beaten really aren't relative to the UFC roster. And he has a big problem in giving up his back. I don't know what it is, but Alex Caceres truly struggles with getting a wizard to prevent people from taking his back. He'll step in and throw a 1-2, and all people will do is step in and body lock him and then shuck by to his back. Kron Gracie's, possibly the best back taker in all of MMA and in jiu-jitsu. He's just incredible. But outside of that, we have seen Caceres, in very, very bad positions from lesser fighters. So let me say that Caceres needs to get on his bicycle and move around the cage because he does have great footwork. And if he can just move and, not allow Hooper to get a hold of him, he could be looking at, possibly winning another split decision, possibly. But Hooper just needs to close the distance, use his weird, awkward, lanky, herky-jerky type of style to get inside of Caceres, grab him. Once he grabs him, I honestly think that he can make quick work of him. It's a big step up for Hooper based on the experience of Caceres, but I do think that Hooper can get it done. Does a finish happen? It should. It should happen based on Caceres' struggles, but I'm gonna be I'm not gonna be overweight on the fight because I feel like a lot of people will go right to Hooper, and I want to play around with the ownership a little bit and gain some leverage on the field. And I'll have my lineups with Hooper, but I'll also avoid the fight. I probably won't take Caceres at all because I just honestly don't see much happening. He can outpoint him on the feet, but nothing significant.
Up next, we got a middleweight matchup. Of course, was initially supposed to be Gerald Meerschaert versus Ian Heinisch. Reported earlier today by MMA Junkie and other outlets that Ian Heinisch out. There's speculation about related to one of his cornermen testing positive for COVID-19. All speculation at this point. But Anthony Ivy is going to step up to take this fight. He's a welterweight, so he's going to fight here at 185 pounds. All his fights are by finish. Should be noted that both of his losses have come by submission. I do know that he recently got his black belt, so there's that. As of doing this show here on Thursday night, we do not have DraftKings lines out. Betting lines, I've not seen that. I was just looking on best fight odds. I would imagine Gerald Meerschaert's probably going to be, 3-1 and or more of a betting favorite in this one. And at that 7,800 price tag, he's probably going to be very popular.
Yes, and finally we found an option in the 7,000 range that we can feel really, really comfortable about. And give me Meerschaert here at 7,800. He's my lock for the 7,000 options. Now, does he go out there and put away Ivy? I don't know. He should. If you look at Meerschaert, he has an incredible ratio of 28 of his 30 wins come by way of finish. So that is a DraftKings stud. And now in a soft matchup, a softer matchup, than his fight against Ian Heinisch, where I was leaning slightly to Heinisch, but based on his strength and his wrestling background. But now Ivy, he's going to be the smaller guy. He's going to be there on last minute notice. And you could be a black belt, but when you're getting hit in the face and you're getting beat up and ground and pound, sometimes you're gonna be exposed to some submissions and get put in some bad positions. So it's almost like pick your poison. Either I'm going to submit you or I'm going to ground and pound TKO you. So that's how I see this going. And I think Meerschaert at 7,800 is a lock. Every week we've been dealing with this, so it's a nice little gimme. And it's a free square. Pick Meerschaert, move on. If you want to play with leverage, a lot of people are going to be picking Meerschaert. He's probably going to be about 70, 80% owned, that heavy. Get a little unique, get a little contrarian, avoid it in a few lineups, but it's a very safe play.
Yeah, I remember last week it was like 70% in the big
Yeah.
GPP. And the fighter's name is escaping my mind right now. Who lost? Man, I can't think of it.
I can't remember what day it is. So,
It was supposed to be who was supposed to fight Kevin Holland.
Rodriguez,
Yeah,
D-Rod.
yeah, Daniel Rodriguez. Yeah, he ended up being. I want to say it was 70% ownership, but he was at 7,400, so he was kind of going out there. So that's something to definitely pay attention to. Then we're gonna have a featherweight matchup. No, featherweight, not bantamweight, featherweight of Cody Stamann and Brian Kelleher. Cody Stamann 9,100, 7,100 for Brian Kelleher. Over on FanDuel, $20 for Cody and $12 for Brian Kelleher. I was actually supposed to chat with Cody Stamann last Friday, and that morning. Got a text message that he wasn't going to be able to do the interview because of a family death. And of course, it's come out that it's his brother still fighting in this position. When we talk about those, I feel like Brian Kelleher is going to be a popular play. I mean, just look at his last two performances. Cody Stamann, I don't know how much I at the 9,100 price tag, because to me, when I'm paying, for that 9,000, I want a stoppage. And that's just not what he's been able to show in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, first things first, respect and well wishes out to the Stamann family. A tragedy. I feel so bad for him. I'm actually surprised that Stamann's going through with the fight. He's probably doing it because his brother would want him to do that. That's a tough thing to deal with. We've seen it with Walt Harris about how much of an emotional burden that's going to be and how you have to juggle that emotional burden and still perform because honestly, the other guy on the opposite end of the cage does not care about your personal problems, and that's just the truth. I'll be pulling for Stamann, absolutely. And I think that he is the better fighter. I will say that he's the better fighter. He has some better kicks than Brian Kelleher and has a great blast double. Like he shoots a great double leg, but he does get lazy and a little complacent in some areas. So I wonder what Cody Stamann is going to come out. He's going to come out like so angry and upset and emotional that his output's going to be higher. Because if his output's higher and you mix it into what he already has, he's going to look like a nice little play at 9,100 against Kelleher because he should be able to beat Kelleher and just take him down at will and, outclass him. But if he's a little gun shy or he's just relying on that blast double, let me tell you that Stamann was caught in a nice guillotine by Brian Caraway. And it was like the last 10 or 15 seconds of that fight. That's a while ago. But it's on the same side of Brian Kelleher's strong guillotine side. So I know that Brian Kelleher has a crazy amount of guillotine wins. And if you watch him, he has such a great technique with it. And he's submitting black belts with it. And he's submitting, prospects with it. So will I be back in Stamann in a few lineups? Because I think that, the narrative and maybe he's going to go out there and look to put on an absolute world beater of a performance. Mm-hmm. Sure. Will I also have a few lineups with Kelleher because of the potential of a guillotine choke? I don't think that Kelleher is really going to do much on the feet against Stamann that he can't handle. I think it's a Kelleher, Hail Mary guillotine or nothing. So I'll have some at 7,100. The value is crazy right there.
Thomas saying Stamann should smoke Brian, can take down easy. But the narrative, one of the things about Cody, he moved out to Vegas, I want to say about 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. And he's been out there training where I remember when he made the move and I talked to him about it. He said it was actually really his girlfriend is one who really basically told him, this is what you need to do. This is, I mean, Pete, this, you got a short time frame and he understands that that's what he's got to do. So, we'll see what happens in that matchup. Then we got Charles Byrd versus Maki Potolo. Maki Potolo 7,400. Charles Byrd 8,800 on DK over on FanDuel. $19 for Byrd, $13 for Maki Potolo. Look, if Maki Potolo is going to win this fight, he is going to win by knockout.
Yeah.
Look, that's his path to victory. There's no. It's an easy way to break this fight down. But obviously, when you look at his loss against Potter, he should have won that fight. And now he comes to this one. Charles Byrd has been knocked out, so I think there's that. But I mean, look, if you're looking for a under 8,000 option, that if they win, they're going to score big. Maki Potolo's that guy. Do I have a lot of confidence in it? I don't know.
Yeah, I think this fight's very interesting, and Potolo's moving up a weight class, and, when he was at 170, perhaps the weight cut was, detrimental to his performance, and maybe that's why he looked sluggish and kind of got outclassed and lost to Callan Potter. Let's be real. He lost a striking match to Callan Potter, and Callan Potter really just picked him apart everywhere. And that he had no business doing that to Maki Potolo. Now, after watching a lot of film, Charles Byrd is the better athlete. He has great Muay Thai, he has great wrestling, and some great jiu-jitsu. It's his striking defense and his chin that he's a little susceptible to the big shot. Now, Potolo, he does have big shots, and his nickname is Coconut Bombs, but he's more of a volume type of guy. So, but he goes pitter, pitter, patter, and then cracks on a big shot. So, I think you need this fight, man. I really do. I think that I could see it going either way because Byrd does struggle against people that throw heavy. Now, maybe Potolo's going to feel more like himself at 185 and going to go out there and just realize, as soon as this fight starts, I just have to crack Byrd hard so that he respects my power and it makes him hesitant of his game plan. Because Byrd literally is the more skilled fighter. Now, I will be playing both sides of this. This is one of my favorite fights to target this week. I do think that Byrd should be able to take Maki Potolo down at will and just have his way with them on the mat and ultimately get a finish. Would I be surprised if Potolo goes out there and puts away Charles Byrd because Charles Byrd literally gets dropped by a gust of wind? No, I will not. And, you need this fight. So I definitely think you have to look at it.
Then you got a flyweight matchup, Alex Perez versus Jussier Formiga, 8,300 for Alex Perez, 7,900 for Jussier Formiga on DraftKings. Over on the FanDuel side of things, $18 for Alex Perez, $14 for Jussier Formiga. I talked to Alex probably about 2 weeks ago. He actually told me this funny story about back in 2010. He was actually the person that was picking up Jussier Formiga at the airport to fight in Tachi Palace. Or for the long time MMA fans know, when we talked about flyweights back in the day, it was in Tachi Palace. I mean, I guess this is my question on Jussier Formiga. Has Father Time maybe caught up with him?
It could have. And, being a lighter guy, that means that you're losing speed and scrambling ability. But let me tell you that Jussier Formiga is one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the lighter weight classes. And after watching film, his striking's not bad. He just doesn't throw enough. And he basically goes inside. He pummels inside for a body lock and works a nice takedown. And once people hit their back, he's one of the best guard passers there are. So I think that I think this would be a popular fight, and a lot of people will be backing Perez. And I think Perez gets it done. I think that he has the wrestling to keep it on the feet and pick apart Jussier Formiga, because Formiga is literally going to be looking for takedown after takedown. As soon as Perez steps in to throw a combination, Formiga is going to be, trying his hardest to get those underhooks, press him against the cage, and work a nice takedown. Do I hate Formiga at 7,900? No, I don't, because if he does take Perez down and he gets his back or he puts him down there, I think that he could get a submission. But history shows that, Formiga is not the best finisher. And, even when he does have people in bad positions, you think about the Brandon Moreno fight, he wasn't able to finish Brandon Moreno. And I think Perez is a little bit better than Brandon Moreno. Brandon Moreno scrambles really well, but I think that Perez is better. So, 8,300 for Perez isn't a bad price. I just don't know if he goes out there and has enough volume to really back up that price tag. If he drops him one time, then maybe his score elevates a little bit, but he's not going to be looking for takedowns. So you literally want reversals and significant strikes. The pick for me is Perez, but I can't blame you if you're going to go Formiga. I'll probably have Formiga in a lineup or two.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned there, I think one of the things that concerns you about Formiga is that the fight doesn't hit the ground, just about not being active enough on the feet with his strikes. Then we got a light heavyweight matchup, Alonzo Menifield, 9,000, taking on Devin Clark, 7,200 on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, $21 for Menifield, $11 for Devin Clark. Alonzo Menifield, I mean, look, this guy's just a straight-up finisher. He's only been in the second round, I believe, once in his career. I think, there's two things. If I'm a Alonzo Menifield backer, which I will be in this matchup, is what happens if he doesn't get the knockout and early on, Devin Clark maybe wears him down, can use his wrestling, because we haven't seen him deal with adversity. What's it going to happen when he has to deal with adversity? And we got this question in on Twitter, says, can you go over Alonzo's takedown defense and counter wrestling ability?
Yeah, so Alonzo comes from a good camp that has fought Devin Clark before, and I think that Alonzo has a lot of potential within the division. He's so explosive. In saying that, he's only 9-0 and he has 9 finishes. So, he is a great GPP play because if he gets a win, most likely it's early and you're going to score high. Now, he's facing a guy in Devin Clark who does not like to get hit. He's tough, but he also has bad tendencies of running away from fighters when they start to engage with him because he just cannot handle the pressure and ends up, resorting to grappling exchanges and pressing his opponents against the cage. Now, Menifield's gas tank is questionable. Menifield's a big guy. He's a thick guy with a lot of muscle. And, he hasn't really faced somebody that can take him down like Devin Clark can. I think that Menifield's fight is round 1, obviously. But I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see Devin Clark go in there, be able to get inside the power of Menifield, press him there, wear on him, and then make him work and defend takedowns and land some takedowns and potentially win a decision. That would not be crazy to me. I mean, especially when you're looking at underdogs, I don't think plus 180 is a bad line for Devin Clark based on his wrestling and the unknowns behind Alonzo Menifield. Now, in saying that, for DraftKings, if Clark goes in there and gets takedown after takedown and ends up winning a decision, does he score well? Probably not. He's done it in the past and he hasn't scored that well. Can he knock out Menifield if he gets him exhausted? Sure. So this is another fight where I feel like it's going to be a pivotal matchup and a lot of ownership is going to be on Menifield. So you can kind of leverage that out a little bit and side with the ownership, but also play Clark at 7,200. I'll be playing both sides, but I honestly think that Clark could surprise people and take Menifield down a lot.
Yeah, that's his path to victory.
Yeah.
He's got to close that distance and make this a fight against the fence, and that's got to be the key for him. First fight of the night is going to be Herbert Burns versus Evan Dunham. Herbert Burns 8,900, 7,300 for Evan Dunham over on FanDuel. $18 for Burns, $14 for Dunham. Of course, we all know my thoughts on the opening fight of the night. It's a fight that I generally do not take. Obviously, Herbert Burns, a brother of Gilbert Burns. And this is at a catch weight of 150 pounds. And Evan Dunham, because of him being a veteran, I'm sure some people are going to maybe potentially look at rostering him. Here's a little note on Evan Dunham. His last stoppage win, January 28th, 2012. Start to do the math there. That's a long time ago. It was against Nick Lentz, which was a doctor stoppage. I have a feeling that Burns is going to be a popular play. I think the only question is can Evan Dunham, especially if this fight gets to the ground, can he defend those submission attempts?
Yeah, for most of my lineups, I will pivot away from Burns at 8,900 based on the resume of Evan Dunham. Coming in at 7,300, Evan he has wins over a lot of notable names in the UFC. Now, in saying that, he is coming off of being retired, hasn't fought in a few years, literally coming off the bench and just, I hope it's not a last. I hope he's been training consistently. It's tough to know, especially during the quarantine, but he does have a good ground game as well. He's a black belt and he has good wrestling. Burns obviously has the advantage in the jiu-jitsu department. The Burns brothers are incredible when it comes to jiu-jitsu. But don't be mistaken, this is not Gilbert Burns. Okay, it's Herbert Burns. And, just because they have the same last name, don't expect the same type of performance. That performance from Gilbert Burns the other weekend was incredible. Evan Dunham could be a flyer for me in a few of my lineups because the volume's there. I think that he has the wrestling to keep it on the feet, and Herbert Burns somewhat struggles to get guys down. I don't really see him having such a high amount of, a variety of takedowns to catch Evan Dunham off guard other than pulling guard on him. So Evan Dunham at 7,300, he's not one of those bad 7,000 plays. He's not an immediate scratch out for me, despite everything. Now, in siding with Burns, Burns did look good in his last fight and landed a very, very nice knee knockout that his opponent, Nate Landwehr, just ran straight into, and he looked incredible. And he looks like the complete package. But this is he's facing a 55er right now, but Evan Dunham is susceptible to body shots. Literally, if you touch him in the body, he folds over, and it's just the truth. He has something wrong with his liver. I don't know. When he steps in, if he gets kneed in the liver, I wouldn't be surprised to see Burns get a finish here. But at 7,300, he's not a bad dog, and I'll take him at plus 185 in a few of my lineups.
Yeah, Thomas on the chat mentioning about that says all over Burns, think Dunham just doing it for the money. Body is so weak. Hoof going to have Burns attack it. So that's a very good point. Before we got 15 minutes here left in the show, we are going to take all of your questions. Of course, be sure to check out all of the awesome coverage we have over at Awesemo.com. Sign up for the Awesemo Plus MMA weekly package for $8.95, where you'll get access to all of Awesemo's coveted tools. All you got to do is go to Awesemo.com/join to take advantage of this offer. Of course, be sure to follow Awesemo on Twitter at Awesemo_com. Of course, be sure to hit a thumbs up button here on YouTube. We greatly appreciate that. Also, other offers that are currently up on the website, get 20% off the PGA yearly with the promo code Schwab, SCHWAB. That is valid through June the 11th. Also, you can get 10% off a platinum yearly with the promo code Summer. That's also valid through June the 11th. I want to hit a couple questions we got on Twitter here earlier on today. Favorite underdog on the card for DFS purposes?
I don't really like a lot of the underdogs, to be honest. I guess Sandhagen's technically an underdog. It's more like a pick 'em, so I won't pick that for you. That's a little cheap answer. Let me see. I honestly think Asuncao as a slight underdog is not a bad pick based on the struggles of Cody Garbrandt.
Next up, best matchups to target for a first round knockout.
Okay. Well, let's start from the bottom. I think the Menifield side, I think that's somebody you need to look at. He's like a GPP type of guy. I think the Byrd Potolo fight is one of the most pivotal fights on the card, because whether Byrd submits him or Potolo knocks him out, I expect a finish. I would be completely surprised if that went the distance. And if it does, I would expect whoever wins the fight to have a high point total. And then I'd say O'Malley. I really think that O'Malley could get it done too.
Next up, John goes, same question each week. Who is our MVP on FanDuel this week? Top 2 or 3 choices.
Ooh. MVP on FanDuel. Let me think. Well, a little sleeper play on FanDuel. I think Sandhagen, especially if he defends a lot of takedowns from Aljamain Sterling and has a high output. I think that he has a very favorable type of style for FanDuel. He's a nice striker, volume type of guy. If you can prevent takedowns, he could have a great score. If he gets taken down, obviously not. O'Malley's another guy I like over on FanDuel, despite the 22 tag. I'd say right there, Bird's not bad either at 19. And of course, Amanda Nunez, she's going to be a staple in a lot of my lineups.
Of course, someone joking about how I love to fade the first fight. Tom saying first fight hard to fade here. I don't disagree with that, but I think that's, if you're going to fade the first fight, you think Evan Dunham can give a fight here. If you think Herb Burns is going to get the finish, I understand why someone would say, hey, you got to have that first fight.
Yeah, I mean, if the fight hits the mat and Burns, has Dunham down, I expect Burns to be able to, cut through his guard like butter and put him in terrible positions, because I don't know, he might have better jiu-jitsu than his brother. His jiu-jitsu is so slick. It's so nasty. But Evan Dunham literally has been here before, and he's faced adversity in the UFC. And, just haven't seen enough from Burns. Do I like his prospect in the division? Absolutely. But I feel like this could be a matchup that might bite them in the end, whereas Evan Dunham's just too tough to put away, and he's there and wins a decision based on volume because he has thrown 100 significant strikes in the past before.
Thomas in the chat mentions no crowd could help Cody.
I don't think that has to do with it, because you'd like to think so, right? I mean, it's tough to see Cody go from the top to literally the bottom. I don't think it's that. I think it's a temper. I think it's controlling his own emotions. I don't think it's anything to do with pressure. I could be wrong on that, but when I see Garbrandt get hit, it's almost like when I was a younger fighter and I was in that same type of like that teenager mode of when you get hit, oh man, I got to give you one right back immediately. And it's, you let your emotions really dictate your actions. And that's something that at the highest level of the sport, you have to get rid of. You have to literally have a level head at all times and just, regardless of whatever position you're in, you just need to be level headed.
I get your thoughts on this, as Samuel mentioned in the chat. Because of the 25-foot octagon, I think I prefer Sterling. He goes, honestly, but not sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. And let me say, Sterling or Sandhagen, you can't go wrong. I would imagine Sandhagen's entire camp was defending takedowns. And as of recently, Sterling has struggled with his takedown. I think he's like, 0 of 12 or something crazy like that. And his past couple fights of trying to land takedowns. The small cage could initiate it, but also Sterling might be, content with the success that he has found in his striking lately of just throwing tons of kicks. I think Sandhagen is just too smooth, man. I like Sandhagen.
Next up, from Ty, he says he's got to ask his weekly question. And for cash on FanDuel, who do you like 2-3 guys you would build a core around?
Amanda Nunez. I don't think you could go Amanda Nunez and O'Malley. That makes things very difficult. I'd go Meerschaert, definitely on all platforms. Nunez. And then I would say I like Byrd. I like Byrd slightly more than I like Potolo.
You can look at Herb Burns at $18 on FanDuel too.
Yeah, you could. That's a nice price tag.
Let's go next up. Kind of scrolling through the timeline here. Some questions we have not brought up here. This from Travis: can Alex Caceres keep Hooper on the outside and get the W?
Yes, he can. And every single fighter here can get the W. It's very possible. Nothing's impossible in there, and you never really know what's going on. And Alex Caceres has great footwork. And if you notice, Hooper, he lunges into every shot and gets very desperate. Now, the last time I saw Caceres fight, he was moving a lot more, okay? He needs to do the same thing that he did against Steven Peterson and move a lot, because Steven Peterson tried to take him down and couldn't. Chase Hooper is a little different, though, because his style, he's got like this, like, he's long, so he's like a gangly type of takedown approach, where if he can lock his hands or drag you down by leg lacing you, then, it's very different. But I think the safe play is Hooper. I mean, you're really hoping a lot goes right from Caceres. He has to literally fight the most perfect fight out there. And even his teammate and Sean O'Malley on his podcast is picking Chase Hooper at 8,500.
No, they don't train together anymore.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So ex-teammate. So that's another thing, is where Caceres, where is he training? And he doesn't have the great mind of John Crouch in his corner anymore. So it's like, come on.
There's some fighters who would not agree with that statement.
Yeah. But you know what?
I talked to a few that have left the lab, and some just, when they say no comment, or some just come out and say it. Yeah. But you know how that is in the gym business. It happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I just think he needs a smart mind that has been there before and can give actual good advice. And maybe Caceres, this is just history repeating itself, and he's going to get his back taken and choked out again.
Travis asks, can you fade all the big three and still come out on top in the GPP?
So you'd have to fade Nunez, which is ballsy. You'd have to fade O'Malley in a tough matchup, but where he should outclass him. And then Cody Stamann. You need a lot going right for you, but this is a week to try stuff like that. Honestly, if you want to be contrarian, and I don't know how many people are going to fade all three or even fade two. I think fading O'Malley gives a lot of leverage on the field. And I think that can give you a lot of leverage if you fade it. I don't know if it's a good idea, but he's very popular and a lot of people are backing him. And Eddie Wineland's been there before. What happens if he's just too tough to put away?
Yeah. Next up, Samuel mentioned he likes Menifield for MVP. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. But the only concern is we had not seen weather adversity, and what happens if Devin Clark can get the knockout. Asking for our best parlay picks, asking for a 4 best parlay picks. So I'm guessing that Robert's asking to put together a 4-fighter parlay.
All right.
I would stick away from Nunez because she's a 6-1 favorite. I mean, that's going to hurt your odds right there. I was going to put in I would go Sandhagen.
I can't wait.
I wouldn't say Meerschaert because I think he's going to be like a 3.5 to 1 betting favorite. I would go Sandhagen, Alex Perez, Menifield, and Burns.
Wow. Okay. If I was coming up with a parlay, I would go Asuncao, Sandhagen, Meerschaert. I don't care what the odds are, and I'll go with Charles Byrd.
We got 5 minutes here left in the show, so I want to get through these questions quickly as possible. Be sure on Saturday, 1 hour before the fight starts, we'll be live here on the Asuncao YouTube channel for Live Before Lock. Hunter, Pete, raw points only, Nunez or O'Malley?
So tough to say, man. So tough to say. I think it's close. I really do. I really think it's close. The thing is the significant strikes of O'Malley doesn't match up to the hard significant strikes of Amanda Nunez plus the takedowns. Felicia Spencer is going to be trying to take down Amanda Nunez, but what happens if Nunez, turns the tides and decides, guess what, I'm putting you on your back. How does she handle that? So I'd say the 5 rounds, I'd have to lean Amanda Nunez at 9,400.
Roy asked, fade Amanda Nunez, and I'll add a second part of this that was brought up a little later in the chat. Can you not have Amanda Nunez in the millionaire contest?
I think you could. I have a few lineups where I faded it, and I don't think you need to have it because she has scored okay when in a 5-round decision before. Nothing crazy, and perhaps she only wins 3 rounds and Felicia Spencer wins 2. So you're basing your score point total on those 3 rounds. I'd fade it in a contest. Why not?
Is Sterling Sandhagen a stackable fight?
I don't like stacking fights. It's an interesting fight. Usually the 8,000 range is a close fight. You could be looking at more significant strikes from Sandhagen and more takedowns from Sterling. In a main card only type of format, I'd look in that direction as well. I think that's a fight you could stack in addition to the main event if you had to stack a fight.
All right. Milan asks, you got to choose 2.
Yeah.
Martin, Kelleher, Potolo, and Formiga.
Martin, Kelleher, Potolo, Formiga. I'm going to say Martin. I don't like those other options. I guess Formiga is the safer, possibly the next safe option because he beats everybody besides the elite of the division. I don't like the matchup for him though. So I guess in that situation, I would have to say Formiga is my second.
I would take Potolo just because if he wins by knockout.
Yeah. It's just so hard to take Potolo when I was so high on Potolo and then he got worked by Callan Potter, who had no business beating him, and Charles Byrd's bigger and better. So, you never know though. It's MMA and that's why we love it.
Yeah. Potolo's had the issues at 170 with the weight cut. Now at 85, how much will that change things? That's all good. Time we'll see. Of course, you definitely got to check out those weigh-ins tomorrow morning. Myself and Pee Wee back on Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern time to do Live Before Lock, where all we do is we answer your questions right from the start of the show right till the end.
It's my favorite segment.
So if you have any questions, and somebody in the chat mentioned, did you say the L word early on the show?
I hope I didn't. Did I slip up?
Apparently you said that L word.
I guess I did. Dang it.
For those who don't know what we're talking about, that would be the lock word that Pete has said he's never going to use again.
I guess I slipped.
Yeah, but yeah, man. Anything else you want to touch on before we get out of here?
No, just an exciting card. I think sometimes simple lineups will do it, whereas you'll be overthinking it and trying to get so contrarian that you're throwing so much money around and wasting so much money. But find some fighters you really love, back them, and take some stands.
Of course, be sure to hit that thumbs up button here on YouTube. Of course, be sure to give Pete a follow on Twitter at Pete the Heat MMA. I am at Jason_Floyd. That's going to wrap it up for the UFC 250 DFS Strategy Show here on Awesemo.com.